It's been a long day, and I bet you thought I wasn't uploading anything today, but I just got home late. So it's coming out. I'm here, and I have to talk about this Hunter Biden stuff. I'm not going to go over what everybody else has already told you, and frankly, I don't necessarily care about the facts on the ground all that much. I don't care what the details are of what Hunter may or may not be prosecuted for, what the investigation's about. The fact is, the New York Times first, and now the Washington Post, the two establishment rags, the core of acceptable opinion, they define conventional wisdom. And they're both talking about Hunter Biden and his laptop. And they're talking about the very real possibility of Hunter Biden being prosecuted. What for? Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether it's over those lewd pictures involving his, I think it was his niece or something. I'm happy to say I've never really, I don't think I've seen them. I've seen certain pictures from the laptop. I don't think that any of that stuff was, it makes me sick to think about. And I don't think that that they would prosecute Hunter Biden for something that salacious, even though that's probably, that might be the worst thing that he's done. Assuming that the messages from his late brother's wife, widow, who he was having an affair with, assuming that we can imply from her messages that he, how should I put this? Because I don't know how far it went, but she outright said that he was a bad influence on the kids. We'll just put it that way. And if that's true, if he did anything to his late brother's children who obviously his brother could no longer protect, I have no words to describe how vile that could be. Just how disgusting that is. And so if he were prosecuted for anything that is mentioned on that laptop, I would hope it would be that, but I know for a fact it won't be that. They want to take down Joe Biden via Hunter. They're going to go for something a little more white collar. They're going to go for what the Washington Post is talking about, his business dealings, this time in China. The Ukraine stuff maybe not, because that is inconvenient given the current media narrative. If they try and take down Hunter Biden over his corruption in Ukraine, well, that reflects poorly on Ukraine, and we can't have any of that, can we? China, however, is increasingly being viewed as an unfriendly country by the U.S. establishment. There was an attempt going all the way back to Kissinger to try and integrate the Chinese elite into the the Western, World Economic Forum type of elite. Even though I don't think the World Economic Forum existed when Nixon went to China, but those kinds of people. And I think that they really feel betrayed that China is not leaning in their direction on the issue of Ukraine and Russia. China is officially neutral on the status of the war, but being neutral on this war is viewed by the West as being pro-Russia. You can't be neutral on the war. Me, as someone who has expressed opinions from the beginning, I said I didn't really care who won this one way or the other. I just hate to see human suffering. I would be considered a Russian puppet or a Russian stooge or a supporter of the Russians, someone who is a Russian sympathizer, because I don't, unabashedly endorse the cause of the Ukrainians. And so people in the West view China much in the same way. The Chinese ambassador to the United States, I believe it was on one of the Sunday shows this past Sunday, and he was pressed in a very annoying way by, I think the woman must have been a guest host, or not a guest host, a fill-in. I think that there's some smarmy little man who's usually, I think it was CBS, who usually does CBS's Sunday show. And she just kept, prodding the Chinese guy and saying, why won't you condemn Putin? Why won't you condemn Putin? Jimmy Dore did a segment on this segment very meta. I'm doing a segment referencing a segment from Jimmy Dore on a segment from CBS, but it was he did a good job summarizing this and picking her apart. But it's clear, I mean, this woman is not autonomous. She is a cog in the wheel. She's a worker bee, and so if she's pressing the Chinese that way, then that's the way that the U.S. establishment is going. They are feeling more hostile towards China, and even all the way up until the time that this war started. Apparently, the Biden administration. Now, maybe this is disinformation from the Biden folks. I don't know. I don't think that this was leaked from the Chinese. Apparently, the Biden folks were giving intelligence over to the Chinese, saying, "Look, China's going to invade Ukraine. Look at this. Look at all this." And the Chinese were then passing this on to the Russians and saying, "Hey, look at what the Americans told us. So this is what they know about your plans." Which obviously, it might not do a great deal to help Russia, but it doesn't hurt Russia either. And so, if they were going to take down Hunter, and by extension, disable, for lack of a better term, Joe Biden, so that he cannot run for re-election, which he still claims that he plans to do, so that he does not run for, to seek his party's nomination for a second term. At this point, I think it would be appropriate for the U.S. establishment to take Hunter down via China. And I don't think this means that they're going to actually come after, Hunter and Joe too hard. I think this is just their way of trying to nudge the Bidens out of politics. Joe will have to, make some announcement or tell people in seats, no, I'm not running for president. Gosh darn it, I'm not doing it. So that it'll clear the way for other Democrats to announce and to campaign, for the 2 years after the midterms. Just like Donald Trump said, hey, I'm going to announce whether or not I'm going to run for president, after the midterms. And by the way, he's running, in case you hadn't noticed. But he's not going to officially say it until after that. Well, that's normally what people do. I think the earliest that any serious candidate ever announced was Ted Cruz in March of 2015. Just a couple months, maybe like 5 months, after the midterm elections. Now, how far they take this, it really depends on how stubborn Joe wants to be. They obviously can't say this to him overtly. Nobody can just come right to him and say, hey, Joe, it's over, It has to be this, behind-the-scenes stuff. It has to be a nudge. It can't be anything direct, because that is, that's just not the way they do things, at least I don't think. But I think Joe will get the message, and we probably will not be seeing him on the ballot in 2024. I mean, these midterms they look like they're going to be historically bad. I mean, obviously it's an off year. It's always going to be a year that benefits the party in opposition, because it is the first midterm after a presidential election, after the inauguration of a new president. There always blows back, and they always at least lose the House or something. But when I hear, and again, then maybe this is just one poll, I should look at the averages, blah blah blah. A lot of these polls suck. St. Leo University, and I'm not somebody who follows polls too much, but I do. I'm familiar with a few, especially in Florida. St. Leo is not what I would call a right-wing pollster by any means. In fact, I think in the last election, they erred towards being a more favorable in their polling numbers to the Dems. Who knows? Maybe they're trying to pander to Republicans now. I don't know about because a lot of that changes with pollsters. There are pollsters who will, try and favor one side or the other to get praise and funding, from that side. But leaving all that aside, I don't want to get off on a tangent. All I wanted to say is that St. Leo's poll showed that DeSantis in Florida, which was once considered a swing state, is up by double digits against all three of the Democratic candidates for governor. He was up something like 13 or 16 against Charlie Crist, who is not a good candidate, but it's all the Democrats have. Charlie Crist is, of course, an ex-Republican governor who, for some reason, keeps running as a Democrat. I'd imagine that won't energize the Democratic base too much. But then again, the traditional, Democratic base of youthful people and urban minorities and that sort of thing, that base doesn't exist so much here in Florida. The Democrats do have to rely more on elderly Democrats. And so I guess they have to have somebody who doesn't, that's more of their base. Just like with the Republicans, although there is a pretty strong population of, your under 65 Trump voters, Trump type of voters in Florida. But here I go. I'm getting off on tangents again about Florida politics. That's not what I meant to do. But I'm saying, if in a traditional swing state like Florida, we're getting polls where the Republican governor's up by double digits in considering the last, let me think, what was the last governor's election that wasn't close? Can't think of one. Certainly going all the way back to Scott in 2010, the gubernatorial elections have been decided by 1 or 2 points. They always come right down to the wire. If you see someone like DeSantis in a state like Florida eking out not a small victory, but a massive victory, Joe Biden's Democratic Party is gone. I mean, you can't, it's hard to see how, even under normal circumstances, if you have an incumbent president and they lose that badly, because you always expect, yes, you're going to lose in your first midterms, but it's a matter of by how bad. If your party's losing by double digits in Florida, you got to go. And so I think that somewhere the Democrats have realized that their chances with Biden at the top of the ticket are slim to none. And so they have to change the face of this party, and they have to find someone else. Who are they going to find? I have no idea. It can't be Kamala. It can't be Mayor Pete. Both of them would be a disaster, electorally. So I don't know what the Dems are doing. But I would guess, I don't think Hunter's going to go to jail or anything like that. This is to put pressure and to tell Biden it's time to go. Now, does this mean Biden will resign? I think that'd be very extreme. I don't know if they want that on them, because if you have a president that ends up having to resign in shame, that's not going to reflect well on you by the next election. But then again, news cycles move so quickly now. If they can get Biden out of the way now, 2.5 years from now, that's an eternity. People won't even remember that Biden was president. Heck, can you remember when Trump was president? How old were you when Trump was president? Seriously. That was ages ago. I don't think I had any gray hairs when Trump was president. And so maybe the speed of the news cycle these days would enable them to take down Biden hard, to force him out. And yes, Kamala is going to be president, but let's say she appoints a vice president, who of course is going to be handpicked not by Kamala but by other people. Let's say that they somehow find a vice president who's not politically bankrupt, and they're able to take them over the next 2.5 years and build them up in the position of vice president so that they can run for president. Now, it might be too soon at this point, because that vice president won't have time. You know what? Yeah, no, it is, because if Kamala is president, she's the incumbent president. Let's put it this way. You get Biden out of there completely. There doesn't have to be a primary battle, because people will just assume, oh, okay, Kamala's going to be the nominee, and they'll be too afraid within the Democratic Party to run against her. And then once we get closer to the election, surprise, surprise, Kamala announces, oh, I'm not going to run. The vice president's going to run. And if there's a vice president that they find is someone competent, they might have a chance. But that would require three things to go right for the Dems that I don't necessarily think they'll be able to pull off. One is they get Joe to resign. That's always a tough thing, getting a president to resign. 2, you get Kamala in there, and you get Kamala to decline to run for it for her own term. You get Kamala to be president, but you get her not to run for president. And then third, this is the biggest hurdle, finding someone to install as vice president who can actually win in 2024 and who isn't so tone deaf and out of touch that, they don't alienate half the country. Because, you look back to like Obama. Obama alienated a lot of the country. But he wasn't stupid. He understood what he was doing. He wasn't ignorant of these other people. He just had contempt for them. There's a difference there. When he spoke about the bitter clingers, he knew exactly who he was talking about. Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, I don't think they understand ordinary people at all. I don't think they have. I don't think that they know enough to truly have contempt for us. So that's how I see it. I'm sure there's other people who have a similar opinion, but I wanted to give my specific take on it because it's not just, they're trying to take down Hunter because they want Joe to not run in 2024. It's more to it than that. It's a more complicated question. It's not like if they get rid of Joe Biden that all of a sudden everything's great. That they have a vice president that they can run in 2024. They don't. Kamala Harris couldn't win the Democratic primary unless they were able to strong-arm every other candidate out of it. Because if there's anyone running in a primary against Kamala Harris, even if she's sitting president in the Democratic primary, she likely would lose. Heck, Mayor Pete would beat her in a primary. Think about that. And he's he's not great. He's not somebody who, is a real inspiring politician who, is really good at his job. And by his job, I mean, manipulating people. He's not that great of a politician. Kamala Harris is so terrible. You put up anybody against her, they're probably going to whoop her. So now, of course, there's the other possibility that they feel like, Moore's going to drop with this Hunter stuff, and so they're trying to get out ahead of the story. I mean, maybe, but I feel like if they wanted to, all this stuff is internal. They could cover up whatever crimes Hunter Biden may or may not have committed for as long as they wanted, if they really wanted to, because they do that with other politicians. And Hunter Biden isn't even a politician. He's a politician's son. It should be even easier to cover up any potential crimes he committed. So the fact that they are going after him, the default is that they wouldn't do anything about Hunter Biden. That's why they haven't for all these years. That's why Hunter Biden did all these things to begin with, because it was understood that he could get away with them. I mean, Mitt Romney's son was also an executive at a Ukrainian gas company, I believe. Nancy Pelosi's son has been involved in all sorts of things. This is the norm. And so the fact that they are going after Hunter Biden to get to his father is in and of itself quite significant. So, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.